Stevie Ray Vaughan battles his demons and gets clean and sober. The result, which would be his final album, In Step, is up next. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. One of the many podcast stops we hope that you make on your journey, if you're commuting, whatever you're doing. A lot of people tend to listen to more than one podcast, so I hope we're in there. Hope we're in the mix.
I think we are.
Yeah,
I'd like. I mean, not too shabby, right?
Yeah, I hope we're part of the tapestry of other things. People listen to politics or true crime is like a big podcast segment, like true crime stories. And I think
crime is huge, but I mean, it's hard to compete with that. But politics,
our niche. We don't dabble in any of that. We've got our own lane that we stay in, and we do it quite well. So hopefully we're filling that entertainment void. And if you're new to the podcast, well, go ahead and give us a review on your podcast provider, whatever you're listening on. Just if it's 4 stars, we'll take it. 5 stars, we'll take it. Whatever it is, we appreciate it. It helps bring us up in the algorithm, helps make it easier for people to find this. And thank you for joining us. First time or returning listeners, we value everybody equally. Indeed. Everybody gets the same amount of thanks, the same amount of gratitude for one and all. We spread it out. We cut it up in little pieces and spread it out evenly.
Yeah, and sprinkle it all over the garden.
Like leaves, like the October leaves falling. They sprinkle all around, and they're everywhere.
And then it gets all raked up.
It's all raked up, and then more fall.
That's right. Yeah,
it's a constant battle. So
yep.
We're talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan on this one. We'll get into the stats, but such a these tragic losses like this, especially the freak way that he passed away in the circumstances. Those hurt. I don't know if they hurt more because it's such, especially with everything that he had just gone through, and was. It seems like he was really, I mean, he was very well respected and very well regarded, but it seems like he was just going to get revved up and get going.
He was, definitely making a turn.
Yeah.
Which was, Hendrix was kind of doing that as well, wasn't he? When he went.
Yeah.
When he did Electric Ladyland, that was very experimental. But I suspect that he was going to be doing something different on the horizon. Things were changing, and I can only imagine what the music would have sounded like. I always think of him. I always think of Stevie Ray. These guys were just absolutely supernatural when they were around. But it seems like their whatever it was that they had. Their magic, or there's, I don't know, the musicianship was just so, perhaps only maybe too good that they just weren't meant to last. Which I don't want to say flash in the pan, but it was. I mean, it was
a comet that burns bright, or a star that burns bright.
Exactly, and they just it's just too similar, and it's kind of eerie when you think about it. But it's I don't know.
It's very. We'll get a little more into it and the ripple effect that it had on some of his contemporaries as well.
Yeah.
So the album we're talking about is In Step, and this was his final release with Double Trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So he passed away tragically on August 27th, 1990.
Yeah. Yesterday was his birthday, by the way.
Yeah. I'll say.
Yeah.
So happy
October 3rd,
as of the recording of this, SRV. Happy
That's
birthday.
Right. Yep.
So this was released in June of 1989, produced by Double Trouble, which is a group. It's his backing group, and Jim Gaines. This hit only number 33 on Billboard, but it went 2 times platinum. It won a Grammy though for Best Contemporary Blues Album. Okay, so that's where the magic was. This is not you're not going to find this burning up the rock charts, but in the blues circles, something different. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2015 with Double Trouble. And then Crossfire was number one on the rock charts, not the Billboard Hot 100 or 200, but on the rock charts. Crossfire was a number one hit for him. So
yeah,
a really kind of, and this was, I think, his biggest selling album, or he might have tied this, a couple of them, or 2 times platinum as well. So he was a pretty steady level of output despite the problems he was having.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'll get to you, but I came to Stevie Ray Vaughan like 2 albums before with Couldn't Stand the Weather.
Yeah.
Because I remember they were playing that video on MTV for Couldn't Stand the Weather. And it's just got that riff, is like the signature guitar sound. And I ended up buying that cassette, and it's got Cold Shot on there. It's got a lot of great stuff on there. So I was kind of aware of them a little bit earlier, and you probably were too, I'm going to guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I was. I think we were all kind of collectively listening to him at the same time. But yeah, I mean, he was a force to be reckoned with. He came on the strong Texas Flood, the debut. A strong debut, but not as far as recording wise, not so much. I mean, I think it's kind of a bland sounding album in my opinion, but it made its mark. He came on the scene. He's like, this is what I'm doing. This is the blues. And I mean, there weren't really too many artists doing that at the time. And when you say it made contemporary blues album, it's not surprising because he was the hottest blues act in the 80s for pretty much. Yeah, I would say. But
especially being known for his style, not only his fashion style, and the way he looked, but his guitar, but his playing style as well. I mean, he was part and parcel,
Oh, he was
he just looked like a badass,
He was. I think at the height of that in the mid 80s, of course, it is the 80s, right? Everything is excess. Everything is, but I think he might have gone maybe, in my opinion, maybe a little too far with trying to be too much like Hendrix with the guitar behind his neck stuff and the sort of the showmanship, which I'm not that big of a fan of. I just play the fucking thing, I think, you could make your statement effectively just by being a badass, just standing there and just doing it. You know what I mean? That's what I like. Hey, but he did it. He entertained.
Very dynamic player to watch. Very, very fun. Very fun to watch Stevie Ray Vaughan play.
He was
because he's just so good. Just because he's so good, his technique is squarely his own.
The technique matched the Flash, and that was the thing about it. Is like if it could have been all Flash and just not so much the music, but it was both.
Yeah,
and that's what he was good at. The only other person that I could think of that was, who might have been besides Hendrix, of course, but Buddy Guy was a big influence on him. So he was. You wouldn't think so, but he was just as flashy. I mean, I actually got to see him, in his later in a House of Blues with B.B. King, and the man was like playing a solo on stage, and then I'd look up and he's gone. He's like, but the solo's still going.
Yeah,
where the hell is Buddy Guy? Right? He's walking in the rafters. He left the stage. Really? He's still playing the guitar the whole time, but he's leaving the stage. He walked up into the rafters. He's like going down the aisles playing like in the middle of a fucking solo. I had never seen anything like it. And I'm like, okay, that's where that comes from.
That's,
you know what I mean? That's
panache.
That's
panache.
When you think of Stevie Ray and you think of that great solo that Prince did, we talked about that kind of thing that's Buddy Guy.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. But yeah, he was both, he's still around. He's like probably the last of the old timers, and man, he's still there, but it's just
his influences fell far and wide. I mean, that's
absolutely
that's the thing. And you said, I think the first 2 albums, because you talk about Texas Flood and you talk about Couldn't Stand the Weather, Double Trouble is basically a 2-piece. It's kind of just a bass player and a drummer. So it's kind of a blues combo, or the equivalent of a jazz combo, but a blues combo, guitar, bass, and drums. But then they would add, and that was, and they were formed in 1978. So you got Tommy Shannon
Mhm.
on bass and Chris Layton on drums. In 1985, they add Reese Winans on keyboards, and that
Yeah.
also, I think, changed things. For what you were saying, how the first album sounds kind of a little pedestrian or nothing really to write home about. I think expanding Double Trouble gave it gave the band a fuller sound, but then it also
Mhm.
gave Stevie Ray Vaughan some opportunities because he's not the only lead instrument player per se, because
That's right. Yeah.
having a keyboardist in the back playing things gives him some other opportunities as well. So I think it opened up a little some extra kind of colors to paint with, as it were.
Well, you play in the rhythm too.
Yeah,
I mean, there's only so much you can
yeah, he
do.
had to do it all. Now
He
with
had to do it all. Now he could just sort of step back and let this guy take over and just
and
do his thing.
do his noodling and like what
Yeah.
that's on
So
this.
there's that interplay, there's that touch and, that call and response happening thing.
Yeah, and it really filled out
Yeah.
like on In Step, like the sounds, the arrangements, everything. It sounds just really filled out, and adding a keyboard player was like the right, I think it was the right thing because or playing the organ, whatever, in whatever way that Reese Winans was
Mhm.
used and would play. I think it really enhanced, uh, and probably made it a little bit more accessible. I think when people hear blues music,
Yeah.
meaning someone says blues, they think, oh, this guy just playing forever, or it's uh expanding the sound. I think made this album just much more accessible for people as well. Kind of
Yeah,
brought it a little closer to some rock. This is squarely a blues album, right? But it's still kind of, I think, it more accessible to rock listeners or
Mhm.
casual listener. Is that
One of
fair?
That's that I think so, and one of the things that he was very good at was actually writing a proper blues song, which a lot of artists would just sort of channel what was already done,
Yeah, they would just do a lot of covers.
a lot of covers, which, in the grand tradition of blues artists, it didn't matter who wrote the song back in the day. They just, people would just cover each other's songs, and if the song was good enough, you felt it. I
Yep.
mean, the sentiment was there. Sometimes the difference was that they, the interpretation of it was key. Stevie Ray was very good at writing blues riffs, and lyrically, I wouldn't say he's the strongest songwriter. In Step would probably be the first album where he kind of steps up a little bit and kind of wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's actually has something to say.
Yeah. Well,
In
he has a writing. I mean, he's had a writing partner throughout this whole thing too,
Yeah,
who would be
Doyle Bramhall,
Doyle Bramhall
senior,
the
the
first
first,
senior, not to be confused with Doyle Bramhall the second,
the
who
second.
is a blues guitar player, acolyte of Eric Clapton. So
Right.
it can be, I when I first saw him, like, wait, Doyle Bramhall was writing with Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's like, oh no, it's the father, Doyle Bramhall Senior.
Yeah, who was actually a drummer.
Yeah,
He was a blues he was in a blues like band. He was the drummer of
yeah,
that band. But he was I guess a really a good enough lyricist.
yeah,
Stevie Ray, obviously they got along. They all pretty much hung out together. I would imagine Jimmy, his brother. So even Doyle Bramhall the second, very young, got to play with Stevie Ray
yeah.
Vaughan and eventually would play with Double Trouble. They would take those two guys and form a band with them, his own little
Uh-huh.
set, um, along with Tim Sexton, and form a band right after Stevie passed. So they sort of that tradition is carrying on, But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's all about legacy. It's all about family. That's just very inherent today
yeah,
going on, that kind of thing. But Stevie Ray was definitely his presence is still felt. In fact, I think the latest Crossroads Festival, Eric Clapton over the past weekend, John Mayer was, he's still convinced that Stevie Ray is like the man to beat
yeah.
in all of this kind of thing. He's still like he was always the best, like always, and
Still chasing him.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
why In Step?
In Step, it's my
Why
go-to.
this album?
I don't know what it is about this record. You would think that I would probably prefer something like Couldn't Stand the Weather because it is a lot more bluesy.
traditionally blue, the stripped
It's
down.
more raw. It's stripped down. Yep. This album is much more polished. Of course, it's probably the most 80s sounding of his.
But not terribly. I was thinking about
not
that.
terribly.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
But it's there. Yeah,
it's there. But I think it's there to, I think it's there to their advantage. In this, because you get to hear. Because usually you think about blues players also as shitty recordings. Stuff made on tape, like in the 30s and like that you couldn't hear and you couldn't understand. Right?
It's recorded in a tin can, exactly. Like it sounds.
That's usually what you think about, right? When you hear like blues, it's like, it's like hard to hear, crackling. In Step really has a nice. It's well produced, which is important because you get to really. His guitar playing really is separated, and it's not lost. It didn't get lost in the shuffle. Mm-hmm. Which could have happened when you have the 80s and then you also have a keyboardist and you're trying to expand the sound. You can kind of get lost in the sauce. And the good thing about this album is all that stuff sounds great and crisp, and then his playing is kind of laid on top of it. Yeah, which is really nice. Like it's layered and structured really well.
Well, I mean, it's the thing too where he realized, like many artists, where I have to start steering in a different direction. The blue. I mean, I've been doing this for so long. You're constantly touring, playing the blues so much. How far can you take that? I need to start structuring, doing proper songs. Everybody kind of does it after a while. I mean, you got, writing a proper, whether it's a ballad, whether it's whatever it needs to be, just to take you out of that mold of just doing the same thing again and again. Because, like Hendrix, I mean, I find myself keeping these guys sort of at a distance because, every track, there's that same intensity. There's that same kind of playing. You start to go a little numb after a while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, how do you top this? How do you, and after a while, it does start to sound the same. The riffs are there. You start to recognize the same thing.
And blues music has a certain chord structure by definition. Right. So you can listen to this and be like, okay, this is going to be a 12-bar blues type song. So I know when the change is coming.
Right.
There's for something that's so free form, it also has a relatively rigid framework of the 1-4-5 chords or any of the other blues kind of progressions.
Yeah, it seems like a very limited, unlimited palette to draw from.
Yeah,
it's and again, you add to that, you enhance it, but how much can you do that? And with this album, I think he was starting to branch out. He's like you say, he was coming at newfound sobriety. I need to talk about this. Critics kind of panned it a little bit by saying that he was a little too preachy with the album. Like lyrically, it wasn't, thank God the music kind of matched the lyrics and I find that kind of sad because, I really think that he really was trying to say what he wanted to say. Yeah.
I think in hindsight, it's been better regarded. I think the reviews at the time were kind of like that. It's like,
but being that this is his, last effort,
now
I think he would have reached that eventually. I think he would have gotten better.
Oh, of course.
As he went along, I think he would have probably become a much stronger songwriter and structure.
Well, yeah. I mean, before we dive deeper into In Step, then let's kind of put the bow on that because. Mm-hmm. You mentioned his brother Jimmy. His brother Jimmy Vaughan is no slouch when it comes to the Texas blues scene. Famously known as being the guitarist for the Fabulous Thunderbirds. So another group that I was kind of into. Like,
yes, you were.
Toughen Up.
You introduced them to me. Actually, I kind of got
So Toughen Up and Wrap It Up. So there was a lot of this kind of stuff coming around.
Yeah.
So the point I'm getting to is. In 2 months later, after Stevie Ray Vaughan passes away, another album comes out with Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimmy Vaughan together called Family Style.
Yes.
Which did have some different, especially the lead single, Tick Tock, which is a great song. So there was already, and that's the thing is it's so close you could touch it, right? It's like it was there.
That's the
That's the
frustration.
frustration
That's the
it was
yeah, the
there. He was
sadness of it.
like you always say, to take one of your quotes, he was looking beyond. He was looking beyond,
Mhm.
with the newfound sobriety, probably, re-energized, revitalized,
Yeah,
ready to do things. And
he was ready,
that's
and that
stupid.
album proved it.
Yeah.
Because they could have. I mean, traditionally, they could have done him and Jimmy could have done just a traditional blues album because you would think so, right? But it was a total departure, and
Yeah.
produced by Nile Rodgers. I mean, this thing was more funky, it was more upbeat, it was quirky. There was some weird
Yeah. Just
kind
trying
of like
different
real,
things.
sort of like some of that, throwing in some of that ZZ Top esque kind of like hey,
Uh,
DSW, like that kind of stuff, and yeah, like just this sort of like really Texas time, like type of stuff, and just not just blues,
yeah.
but
Just
just
having
the
fun with
whole
it.
just the whole scene,
Yeah.
the whole Texas scene,
Exactly.
was it was
Making an
fun, it
album
was
with his
great,
brother and just
yeah,
kind of, having a gas doing it. And,
right. Mhm.
so the path was there. This was not it's not like what, in other rock and roll stories where they're on a spiraling path to destruction, like Morrison or, and even though the best stuff could have still been ahead, this said he had cleared the table, and we don't know if he would have relapsed. We don't want to think he would have, but at this
Mhm.
point, in step means he has finally gotten in step with life, and everything has kind of fallen together, and he's kind of beaten
That's
those
right. Yep.
addictions and
Mhm.
ready. And yeah, I mean, there's really only two songs on In Step that are really pretty much like Tightrope and Wall of Denial, right? Are pretty much
Yeah.
so that's two songs out of 10. I don't think it's very preachy. Houses are rocking. That's not about that's not about drugs. He's not
No.
preaching, he's preaching about having a good time. So I don't know. I maybe people just didn't want to hear this from him at the time, like this kind of
Mhm.
thing, but it's not overt. I mean, yeah, if you listen to the lyrics, it's there, but I never in listening to this album, and I listened to it a ton recently, I didn't get the feeling that I was being preached to or being told about the
No.
dangers of things. I mean, blues music is like that anyway. I mean, that's what blues
Absolutely.
is,
Thank you. I mean,
is
it's a state of
lamenting or celebrating. I don't know what word you want to use. It's lamenting or celebrating the problems you have.
I
You
mean,
know,
and it's a state of mind, really. I mean, blues music can be inherent in anything, really. I
yeah,
mean, if you really put your mind to it. I mean, you write a sad song, it's a blues song, the best kinds of songs sometimes are the saddest songs, and
and the
it
best
was
blues
people.
has that feel to it, that real feel,
Yeah,
and the real problems and the real trials and tribulations
yeah,
that people go through. That's what that music is,
right.
and connecting with it. So, yeah, I don't see how, unless he stopped in the middle of a song and there was a stop and then he did this preachy thing. Right? I don't see it on this album.
Well,
It's just
those
it's
2
part of
songs
the
happened to
material.
have, but that's the thing. I think it's just, people weren't giving the album itself enough
Yeah,
credit. I think it was just based on the 2 songs that were getting the most airplay, pretty much. And those were strong airplay type song. I used to hear those 2 songs all the time,
yeah,
you know. Houses Rockin' started getting played a little bit later on, but it was
yeah.
just
They had
those
a
2.
music video for that too. So that was
Yeah. Mhm.
that was in the mix, and that's
Right.
just one of those good time. Houses are rock. Like the album starts off with Houses are rocking. You kind of know what you're going to get from there. Like
Yeah.
it's like, here it is. Here's our kind of, just a rave up song. Here it comes. And you just kind of get more of that, and then Crossfire starts right after that. And,
Crossfire. Yep.
dun, 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 dun,
That was another
dun,
one.
dun,
That's
dun.
that's
Yeah.
the 3rd. That was 3. Yeah, those 3 songs were. Yep, that's right. Then of course you do have some covers. Willie Dixon, Buddy Guy, of course.
Howlin' Wolf,
Yeah.
Love Me Darling. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's nice that he's not so reliant on
Mhm.
the cover. Like covers are probably have to be a part of the repertoire. Either because you love those songs so much, and it helps to fill out the album. But like you said, he was developing as his own songwriter,
Mhm.
and in a different way than Eric Clapton, right? Eric Clapton is a pretty prolific songwriter, and he's a blues artist, but it's not
Yeah.
the same. right?
It's not the same, but Eric, he knows how to. His style of blues is the best songs he's ever written, in my opinion, are ballads. Most of the great songs he's done are more or less ballads, in my opinion. He does some great covers, and he's a purist. He's much more of the the stoic. You got to do it exactly the way they did it back in the day. That's not Stevie Ray Vaughan. That is not that wasn't Hendrix. That wasn't people like Prince who were but I mean, there's something. I think there's something to be said about that. I respect that about Eric. But when he has something to say, it's typically in the form of an acoustic number or a ballad, and I think those are his strengths as a songwriter. I think and he's not afraid to go there. Life by the Drop, which was released on the album posthumously after he was gone, after Family Style, is probably one of my favorite. And that's what I'd like to think. That's where he would have done a lot more of those types of songs. And I just think that's a fabulous song. It's just so emotive and it's an acoustic number, and it's different. It's you don't really hear Stevie Ray doing a lot of that, and it was nice to hear. I think he was paying attention to some of the other people in the arena there, and I just it's just so tragic when you think that these guys were so tight and so in awe of each other.
Yeah, he was best buddies with Clapton. I mean, Clapton
and it was such a community. It was such a and man, what a it's just
too bad. Yeah, it's
really
tragic.
Yeah.
Wall of Denial, right? Is that your favorite? It made one of our top fives.
It's my favorite,
right? Our top 5 guitar songs.
I love that riff. I love that. Oh man, that's
so. Let's talk like that kind of the riff in Wall of Denial.
Yeah,
kind of reminds me, because it's got the like Wall of Denial and Cold Shot from Couldn't Stand the Weather. Kind of have a similar kind of feel to it, but it's very emblematic on this album. If you want to hear, for everybody listening, in my mind, what the Stevie Ray Vaughan sound is, listen to the opening riff of Wall of Denial, because it's got he's got a very unique sound. It's clean, but it's dirty. You can hear the notes here. He's like, it's not overdriven. It's got a certain bite to it and a certain dirt to it, but his playing is clear and his strumming is clear.
I think the best word is fluid. There's a fluidity to his playing.
But his tone has that. Yeah. It on the one hand, it sounds clean, but it also sounds like there's some dirt underneath it. And it's not distorted.
And that's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what you want in a proper.
Yeah. His tone is just
in a proper sort of polished studio driven blues song. You want some of that dirt. You need some of that grit in there, but it's just enough to satisfy some of the purists out there, but enough to just, but also to make you take notice.
Yeah.
That if you're not a blues,
because it's such a tone that's squarely his own. It's, just like Eddie Van Halen has his tone that you can recognize. I think Stevie Ray Vaughan has a very recognizable guitar sound, especially when he's, flipped over to the SRV, Strat that he was using. That was kind of like,
it has such a low tone to it. Yeah. And I love that. Typically Strats are more, they could sound kind of wimpy, or just not very loud.
Usually you'd get this out of a Telecaster. Usually like something like this would be a Telecaster with that little bit of a rockabilly type sounding type thing.
That's right.
But the stuff he coaxed out of his guitar, is squarely his own, and it kind of, when you hear it, it's kind of like, it's like, okay, that's Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like when Wall of Denial starts, and even though you've been listening to like 6 other songs before that, when that song starts, it's just, there's something just special about the tone being so crisp and clean, and you can hear it, and the riff. And then the groove that the band gets into on it, it's one of those. It's a special thing, and that is not a cover,
No,
so that shows that the ingredients are there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think it's one of the best grooves ever.
Yeah.
And it just goes, man. It just like, especially towards the end when it just like reaches that, and it's like right. It's almost like a seesaw, like like it goes back and forth, and the scales up and down, and he's just, oh man, I just love it.
So great.
I could play that song over and over, and I did. I used to play. I used to, rewind the tape. I wore that section of the tape out, no doubt. And then, of course, the CD. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to
worry.
You can't wear it the CD.
No, but
unless you scratch it, unless you have it like me in the car and you're throwing it in the. Or
it's like Keaton and Batman, right? With the
Oswald Cobblepot played him like a harp from hell. Anyway, we digress. Same year. Well, Batman. The first Batman was '89, so we can digress and go that far back. Only 3 covers on this album. So again, straight up, this guy is writing his own material, master of his own destiny, which is nice. Like I said earlier, that he's not reliant, leaning so heavily on covers, and like, and he could probably have gotten away with an album of half covers. But I think that partnering with Doyle Bramhall and continuing the songwriting journey was probably important, because that would lead to other avenues. If you're just kind of, being a real purist and doing all these covers, that's, I think you said it earlier, it's only going to take you so far.
Well, everybody was, and everybody was kind of doing it too. Yeah. I mean, you think of like all the British artists, they were, the Stones,
Zeppelin,
they were all, doing it. And I
early Fleetwood Mac, they all,
I think it was important. And I think, because he had been, not struggling, but I mean, he wasn't a household name right away. I mean, he'd been doing it for quite a while. Made some guest appearances, most notably on David Bowie's Let's Dance.
But that was actually he actually played on that.
He did
before Texas Flood was released.
Yeah, that's right. And that he had to do those kinds of gigs.
So he was gaining attention. He was gaining attention.
He had to earn his keep by reputation.
Yeah.
His skill, developing his skill as a musician, as a guitar player. That's what had to sell.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well, I got this now, but I can't just do covers. I can't just, if it's got to be different. It has to be a different.
Yeah, because there's room for that. There are plenty of blues artists that they just go back and they mine, because there's plenty of material. Mm-hmm. But you're kind of going to be known as a one-trick pony then. Like that's, so it was kind of important for him to, and he's been writing his own stuff throughout. So it wasn't like he came to it, but just getting better and better at it. Now let's talk about the final track on the album, which is called Riviera Paradise. Now you want to really hear something different, and potentially where, how do you feel? Do you not like it, or?
I love it.
Okay, the way you were grunting, I thought you were like, "Oh, crap!"
No, it's gorgeous. Okay. It's absolutely stunning. Yeah.
So it's kind of a free-form jazz, kind of thing. It's not a blues song in any form or function.
Yeah.
It's more of an experimental kind of track from him.
It sets the mood,
and I don't mean experimental in like that it's weird and quirky. Experimental meaning that it's not in step with anything else on the album. It's kind of it's kind of breezy, it's kind of mellow, it's chill. It's and that's why jazz and blues have a lot of that improvisational pieces in common, which made it easy for him to kind of kind of go out of his comfort zone and try something like this.
Yeah, I actually heard Riviera Paradise before I don't think that I had heard Texas Flood all the way through. And then there's a song called Lenny, who was his wife at the time, or girlfriend or whatever. It's very similar, very similar type of thing, where it's this like quiet, jazzy kind of thing. And I was like, oh man, I thought he was doing something really like out of left field here. And he had already done it with Lenny, but he recalled that. And I think it was nice after to do something from his first record like that, and then
And now with a fuller band too, and better
with a fuller
productions and
band, but coming back from like he's like redoing that kind of thing again, and
yeah,
it was just now when you look at it, obviously it's kind of bookending each other, and
yeah.
it's kind of sad, but it's a nice touch, you know. It's definitely
Yeah, it was very
uh
interesting when I'm listening. I'm like, wait, this is kind of like uh
mhm,
really, like that. Not even the light, not it's a light sound, but it's not light jazz, right? So it's just kind of,
and that
kind of noodling on the guitar type thing, and just kind
and I have to admit I love that
of
kind of atmosphere. I love
yeah,
there's nothing like the sound of the guitar in that quiet setting, and you could still do all the noodling you want, but it just sounds
yeah.
so it's sexy, it's cool, it's badass, it's
Yeah, it's kind of almost like the thing you'd hear at the end of a night when the bar is closing,
yeah,
and like the
yeah,
band is just kind of like they're done playing and they're just kind of fooling around with for themselves, just
yep,
do it's almost like that kind of a thing. It's like a perfect album closer, especially when everything else is really uh really kind of up tempo, forceful. I mean that in a good way, especially
mhm,
his vocals, like on Crossfire.
mhm,
You know, he's got the right type of vocal timbre for the blues. Also, he's got he was totally suited, like almost like built,
which is
in a laboratory to play the blues.
which thank God that, that's a that happened because he blew his voice. I think it was the, Soul the Soul tour
Hmm.
where he was just that's when he was at his worst, and he actually his voice just went. I mean, he blew it. The constant touring, and when he was, and people were concerned that he wouldn't be able to come back from that.
Yeah,
But you know, therapy and everything,
yeah,
he
yeah.
came back strong.
Yeah, he
So
did. I mean, like I
yeah,
said, like he's
yeah,
uh he's not a screaming singer, but but he really has velocity in his voice and he can really project his voice.
hmm,
Which again is different than someone that's screaming or howling or shouting lyrics. He's projecting the lyrics, which
yeah.
is really that kind of gives also the you combine that with his biting guitar and you've got like I said, like Crossfire is just it's nasty, because of that, and it's oh the just the licks of what song is it where he's just kind of I think it's Let Me oh no, Leave My Girl Alone, which is by Buddy Guy.
Hmm.
I think that's the one where he's just kind of playing. He'll kind of throw out a
And it's that
yeah,
yeah, and that's Buddy
exactly,
Guy.
and
That is and that
throw out a lyric, do a little noodling.
oh man,
Throw
yeah.
out another lyric, do a little noodling. Like those little accents, like that. I like that
He
kind of stuff.
I love it too.
Yeah,
He was, but Buddy was even better at that.
yeah,
He could make his guitar. I urge you to listen to the album that came out in '91. It was Damn Right I Got the Blues, and it was like Buddy Guy's sort of comeback album
uh-huh,
because he couldn't get signed
yeah,
to a record label. He was just and Clapton helped him actually get signed. And there's 5 Long Years. Check that track out,
yeah.
and you're gonna laugh. But you're gonna be like, you're gonna be, damn, this is fucking awesome. Because he just like and even his voice, he matches the guitar,
Uh-huh.
and just with his voice too, and it's hilarious, but it's also so cool. It's
Uh,
just so cool. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's just great stuff.
yeah.
This is a great album for if people are like, oh, I hate the blues, or I don't really like the blues.
No,
Give this one a try
yeah.
because I think it's not that intense. It's not the My Woman Left Me kind of blues type of thing. It's
Mhm.
not that kind of stereotypical stuff. It is a man who I think Stevie Ray got clean in '86. So this is 3 years later. So this was a journey for him
Yeah,
to come through, and I think that's what it is. I think he sounds refreshed and kind of reinvigorated. Um,
yeah.
and like,
And that's key.
yeah,
That was key, and it's a shame. Again, you know, And the thing of it is, it's like, they played all together, and it was Alpine Valley. It was a show that all these these blues artists got together. Clapton was there.
Yeah.
Good Lord, his brother was there. He hops on a helicopter, and what a freak thing. It just, people of Clapton and Clapton's entourage were actually
On
on
the
the
plane too.
helicopter
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Crashed into a mountain, and he was gone.
Yeah,
Was
and
just,
and his brother didn't want him to go. He's like, stay. I want to talk and just kind of
yeah,
spend some
yeah.
time. And Stevie Ray's like, I got to get going. I got to get to my next thing. And the helicopter takes off in thick fog.
Mhm.
And the pilot, I think, had some issues. I don't know what he wasn't rated for something or whatever, but literally hit the mountain, right after takeoff, slammed right into the mountain.
Yeah.
Um,
What a way to, it's
so
just,
quickly. I mean, they were able to recover the bodies. I mean, the helicopter didn't blow up. It just, just hit the side of the mountain. Shock. I remember when that happened. It was just kind of,
yeah, I thought,
shocking.
I heard it wrong. Of course, I thought Clapton was with him.
Yeah.
I heard Clapton, and I'm like, what was that? Like Stevie Ray Vaughan gone, and Eric Clapton. I thought they were all on. It was just like a Buddy Holly thing, and
like the worst case
Richie
scenario.
Valens. Yeah. So
worst case scenario, but yeah, we've got this music, and we've got, like I said, we've got Family Style, which again, that becomes so bittersweet when it comes out 2 months later, and it's like, God damn, everyone was just kind of, it really makes it kind of makes you sad for people that love music, and you think about the what ifs, and we haven't done the what ifs in a while. But yeah, this is one of them, where he was still evolving as an artist. He was only 36 or, so he's still a young guy. He had a long ways to go. And especially with all the revitalization, Clapton's resurgence and just all these, all these artists, all these legacy artists that come back and they're still doing things. I wouldn't have expected any different from Stevie Ray Vaughan, to be experimenting with different style. Not that he would make a dance album or a grunge album, but meaning within the framework of what he was doing to test the limits, test the borders and see what comes out of it. Because it was,
I have no doubt that he probably would have dabbled in a little bit of the tools of the 90s, like, a little bit of electronica here and there, perhaps, maybe a little, some beats, some trip hop type. I don't know. I mean, just the rhythm aspect of it, match that with some of the grooves that he would play. You got a perfect storm right there. It's just,
yeah. And there's plenty of videos. We encourage people, go to YouTube. He did an Austin City Limits. I think around this time, which has a lot of these songs on there, and just, he's one of those guys that make it look so easy. Clapton's probably the king of that. Clapton makes guitar playing look so easy. It looks like he's just so effortless. It's like, oh, I could do that. It's like, no, you can't. You can't. And Stevie Ray Vaughan in that way also is just kind of, he's got his own style to it, but also just, it looks effortless. It looks like they're not even thinking. And they're probably not. It's probably they're a conduit for the music, and a conduit for what's what's coming.
And the thing of it is too, is like his Jimmy taught him how to play. Jimmy was the guitar player, and his older brother, he was, and Jimmy's good. I'm not going to say, I mean, he's no slouch on the guitar,
but he got overshadowed. I mean, he got quickly overshadowed by his brother.
He's a very, very sort of very muddy, very sort of raw type of player. Jimmy, he doesn't seem to follow any rules. Like, he's just, he's like very finger picky, just, tapping the strings, like, type of thing, and just really getting the most out of that.
Yeah.
And it's not as fluid as Stevie Ray, but it's effective. But Stevie Ray just, I knew nothing about the guitar. I think there was a time where he wasn't even interested in playing guitar, and I think Jimmy kind of got him into it. And look what happened, damn,
Yeah, one of those, music happenstances that we are better for. So
he just had the gift.
Yeah.
The knack. I mean, some people just, I don't know. I think it's it's a gift of God, and obviously, I mean, you could bring this, kind of thing into it, but it's just, I think just people just have the knack, the gift, I'm saying? A lot of guitar players who are really great through the years don't have that same gift.
Yeah.
They have to struggle. They have to work hard to
So,
achieve the greatness.
So
And it's not always,
You mentioned him earlier. What about John Mayer?
Mayer, again, he's, for all intents and purposes, I want to hate the guy because he's just so, but you can't because he's just so gifted.
Yeah.
And I think
he didn't start. He started out the opposite. He used to do kind of poppy music and was popular with like women because of his kind of love songs.
Yeah, we're talking late '90s. We're talking that kind of like But man, he's a formidable player.
And then I think I don't know if it was. It might have been from 9/11 when they had like one of those benefits. The raising money. And I think John Mayer played Crosstown Traffic.
Yeah.
And that's when I went, wait, this is the guy that sings Daughters and Your Body's a Wonderland. I think I remember, I'm like, wait, he's doing Crosstown Traffic and he was just like ripping it up. I'm like, oh, and then from there, he kind of never looked back. He wasn't the same John Mayer. He was kind of, he became, I don't know if that's what he originally wanted to be or, but yeah, he was John Mayer's no slouch either. He's kind of a student. Yeah, he's a student of it.
Definitely channels. The voice is not quite as stark as Stevie Ray Vaughan, but it's just
voice.
He's got that tone. He's got these. If he really projected his voice, he could sound a lot like Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I think that's on purpose.
He's kind of raspy, a little more raspy than Stevie Ray Vaughan.
He's very breathy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he did a wonderful rendition of what was it? Michael Jackson's Funeral. He played, what was it? Oh God, was it Human Nature?
Oh, really? Wow.
Instrumental, and it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, he was on stage, and he was just, everybody. The room was completely silent, and it was just him. There was no background. There was no band. There was no. It was just him.
Just him. That's pretty.
Just him on guitar, and it was just So yeah, he's
So where does Vaughan land in your list of guitar players? Clapton's number one.
I don't know.
Okay.
I guitarists are different for me. It's hard to pick. He's definitely up there. I mean, I think it's because he, like you say, he has a very particular style and sound. And I think that's really what sells.
Yeah.
What makes a guitar player great
makes him unique.
That signature sound.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guitar players that have the same, that could play, that could shred, that could do this, play like Eddie Van Halen. And, it's like, I mean, they're great. You got the skill, but it's like, it's
what else you have? What's
right? It's just it's just a dime a dozen. It's like I could play that. It's like boring. I'm thinking of some show like for like some. I think it was like The Odd Couple actually, with Roy Clark. Who by the way is a fantastic, an incredible guitar player, and he proved it on this episode.
Yeah.
The first time I ever saw him play on this, and it was phenomenal.
What the hell's the name of the song he plays? Ah, damn it! It's a famous song.
It's like a Spanish
and he played Malaguena.
Yeah.
And he did a fantastic job. You know who actually does a really good job of it too is Jim Stafford of Spiders and Snakes. I don't like Spiders and Snakes.
I'm not surprised.
He's a fantastic guitar player, and it's not as good as Roy Clark, but like Roy Clark, there's a lot of different videos of Roy Clark playing Malaguena.
But that's the point. It's like these artists, they're great musicians, but they're not selling records because they're great musicians. Yeah. They're selling. They need that that quirky thing, that whatever it is that sells. In this particular episode, like I'm going back, Roy Clark was playing the fiddle, but he was playing like classical music. And of course, Felix is like all over this. Is like, oh, you're gonna be part of a, so he invited this like, like Tostokoff like type of guy. Freaking Cape comes to his, and he ends up and he's starting to play the violin, and he's like, stop, aren't you Billy Ball, whatever his name was on the character, but he played, but he preferred the hillbilly, persona that he really was, like playing rodeos. You're phenomenal. Anybody could play that stanza that you played on the violin. Boring. It's like but the point is that it's the diamond. People who could play that
his special talent was something else. Was not the violin. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and it just and I think getting back to to this, but it's just guitar players really need that one thing. That
either a technique that makes them stand out, or a guitar sound that makes them stand out.
And I think that's the reason why there's so much having people turn to their to the drugs and to the alcohol, and because how do we it's that I suppose that the more talented you are, the more pressure you have to top whatever it is that you did great. How could you top that? And it's like, I can't, and I don't know what to do next. And it's like,
especially if you're selling records and you got a record, you got the record company, the label, right. What you can, we need, they're not looking for you to sell less. They're looking for you to, and they're not looking for you to sell the same. They're looking for you to sell more. So, and he came through it. God bless him. That could have been a tragedy in and of itself, of the alcoholic, hard drinking blues player. I mean, Clapton lived that life for a while, for a long time, and he came through it too. So,
well, I admire people like Clapton because because that's the side of him that makes him more sort of tangible in a sense. Like he's flawed.
Yeah,
he's not the best guitar player, and I know that. It's like I don't have that. He's not God, you know what I mean? But he's done some great stuff, and that's what I like. It's like he has the ability to surprise you, when it counts, when he's got something to say, and is inspired, and you're like, oh my God, you're floored. I love that. I love the unpredictability of it, and it's like with somebody like Stevie Ray Vaughan, unfortunately, it's like I said before, like you get that level of just greatness, all steadfast, like all the way through. And it's really hard to see the flaws, if there are any, in the recordings and stuff, so it's like Hendrix was the same way. I can't.
And he had such a small discography that he didn't have any really, maybe Soul to Soul. I mean, that wasn't one of his best selling albums, but he doesn't have a long enough discography. Neither did Hendrix to, kind of have those missteps, or those albums that really kind of were really, like whatever, and then able to come back from it. I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan was just across the board, just got better and better, as even as his habit got worse and worse, and then he got clean. It was like, okay, wow. Usually you'd lose a little something on the way back, but on this album, like I said, we'll put a link to it in on Spotify. We'll drop a link to the album in the show notes. This way everybody can kind of listen to it, because from 89, but not of the 80s, because it's a blues album. They didn't fall for the tricks. Another group that didn't go with the electronic drums or any of that stuff. They stayed they stayed within the traditional blues framework.
Yeah.
But on this album, you've got a person that's writing personal songs and really developing, great guitarist, but was going to develop into probably a really good songwriter as well. And that is the kind of, that's the untold stories. We know how great he was as a guitar player, but he was getting better and better with the songwriting. He was working and developing that, working that muscle. The guitar playing probably came easy to him. So getting, working with Doyle Bramhall, album after album, and having that collaboration where you get to know each other. Who knows what would have happened, but we have In Step, and that's kind of, there's been posthumous releases after this. The Sky is Crying and a couple other ones, and of course, all this other stuff. But In Step would be the final release in Stevie Ray's lifetime. So we highly encourage you to check this one out. I mean, this is one of Eric's favorites. This is and it's a real banger. Again, it's a fun listen. There's enough different stuff on there. A couple of instrumentals on there too. Travis Walk. So you got a little bit of everything on here. Traditional blues, some of his originals, and then you've got the Riviera Paradise as well, which is some freeform jazz. So I think it's got a little something for everybody. It's definitely an interesting listen, and not very long, right? 40 minutes. So you're in and out of this one.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed really kind of getting into it and digesting it and going back and listening and really kind of being able to, after you listen to it a couple times, you get familiar, then you can kind of start to enjoy and indulge yourself in the material and then start to pick out the parts that you really like. So this was a really great choice, sir.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, it is. Choice. I mean, it's
you done good.
I don't know. I mean, it's just
Tony Orlando and Dawn.
It's part of our soundtrack too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's definitely there.
Yeah, no, he absolutely was. He in the 80s, it was like he was kind of taking the reins over. Clapton was a little more dormant, Behind the Sun and kind of some of the odder things. And this guy was came bursting through with a traditional blues sound that hadn't been heard. Yeah. And he was, like I said, it was flashy and all these things that people were checking this guy out for. Because he made such a big impression when he came out, the look, the hats, the boots, the whole thing was like it was the whole package. So people were intrigued, and we invite you to listen to In Step by Stevie Ray Vaughan. Definitely check it out. Are you going to put this as his best of his releases that he was alive for, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if I could pick the best. It's definitely my favorite.
Well, then there you go. Well, then that's my go-to. That's what I meant.
So it's the best in my book, but
that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted from you. Cool. That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, vibrant society of people there, like-minded that love music and movies. So join us, won't you? Come on over. It's fun. The water is warm because I peed in it, but we'll clean it up and it'll still be warm anyway. So come on in. It's a great group of folks that really love the what?
Why
not?
Why not? Right? Yeah. Okay.
Duty alert. Is that Caddyshack with the baby Ruth in the pool?
Yeah.
Right? And then Bill Murray picks it up and eats it. We'll leave you with that visual. If you're a Caddyshack fan, you know the scene where it's floating.
It has nothing to do with what we've been talking about, but there it is.
We'll leave you with a baby Ruth floating in a pool and someone thinking that it's a turd, and then everybody jumps out of the pool and Bill Murray eats it.
And that'll be the best part of the most talked about part of the episode. Sure.
Oh, you guys got to do Caddyshack. Ted Knight.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Anyway, for Eric, this has been Dean. And we will catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.